Good afternoon, Wilbert Cook, Hand Up Recovery Homes, and my very, very special guest, the always elusive and hard-working, extraordinary hard-working Willy Burton from Congressman Danny K Davis office, and he's the community liaison
and outreach coordinator.
And he's doing a fabulous job. So welcome, Willy Burton.
I appreciate you.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me this afternoon.
Oh yeah, for sure. You one of the people I've known the longest, way back when you were doing youth services.
This is
and that was that New Directions youth services, Life Directions?
Chicago Public High Schools was there for about 10 years.
Right. So, and that's around 2000, 2002, somewhere in that window around then. I originally met him. Then we reconnected, I guess, close to 12, 13 years ago, or is it 15 years?
Something of that nature.
Somewhere in there, as he started to be more active in other circles across the community. And then he landed in a place where we needed him, you know, expanding services for Congressman Danny K. Davis. So without further ado, Willy Burton, I'll let you give a better brief bio of your life of service, as well as the many things you're working on now to enhance outreach in our 7th Congressional District and throughout the United States of America.
Appreciate you, Mr. Cook.
Oh, my pleasure to have you.
Actually, yes, my work started in the community, actually in the Humboldt Park community.
Okay.
You know, me and my dad, we didn't like what was going on in the neighborhood. He purchased property, and being a property owner, he said, I'm vested in my community. So we took the initiative to form a block club, and from that block club, we formed a community organization, Blocks Together.
Oh, okay.
To help people with their city services to get improvements in that area, the crime and the drugs and what have you. And that kind of, you know, I just kind of remember, I got to be kind of honest with you, seeing my dad out there, him being an elder and me being inside, I was amazed by his boldness to just stand out there in the heat, in the fire, you know, dealing with, you know, those gangbangers. You know, he was not afraid of them. And well, to make a long story short, you know, that emboldened me, and we became partners, and that was really my catalyst, my dad.
Okay, that's great.
You know, so it started in Humboldt Park. From there, became a community organizer, became an activist. Didn't know I was being watched by others.
Right.
You know, and I was asked if I could bring that component into Chicago Public High Schools.
Okay.
We was able to get several high schools, several grammar schools, and didn't know while I was doing that work that I had somebody from his office watching my works, you know. So, and I'm here today, and the work continues.
Right. Well, I applaud you for all you've done. I know for young men, you know, in the vicinity of our age, not to date you, but many of us in our late 20s, early 30s kind of took a special leap. It was only a handful of us, but we took a leap, especially in North Lawndale, Garfield area, coming into arena. Now I'm understanding you had been introduced already by your father, which led to me meeting you with Life Directions later, but me and the North Lawndale community newspaper, Isaac Lewis, were just jumping out into that water.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, I had some introduction at a young age and didn't understand it. But when I formally made a decision, I wanted to be active in the community. And helping Isaac, Valerie Leonard, North Lawndale Community Newspaper, who now is one of the most, the greatest West Side advocate for nonprofit developer. She's worked with every major institution doing nonprofit management, development, strategic service. And then I see you in that same vein. Isaac has grown that paper over the last 25 years. Valerie's grown her persona and her ability to help other organizations throughout the nonprofit community those 25 years. I've been growing to build this Hand Up Recovery Home for those 25 years. Matter of fact, this particular T-shirt I brought out of the archives when I was a little bit that grown a little bit thicker and worn a little bigger. That's
Yeah.
part of my problem with my wardrobe today malfunctioning. But the reality is this shirt is from 2024 and we're doing youth events in the Park District and the Chicago Youth Centers, and we were maxing out gymnasiums and auditoriums. You know, so and to that, I want you to talk about how you have helped evolve and get all these young people, get young men in the arena, bringing men our age back into the arena, or getting them to finally take life in a policy-making advocacy environment a lot more serious and realizing the impact on their lives. You want to?
Well, it's really exciting to be able to work with youth at the capacity that I'm doing it now, because we realize all the trauma
Right,
that our young people go through. We understand the mental health aspects of that. And I'm in an environment with somebody that's consistently advocating for assistance for trauma, mental health,
Right, yes, definitely.
into the high schools. Because as we know too well, there's just so many issues that young people deal with outside of their school environment that affects them, how they produce in the classroom with their core curriculum. We're able to also, we do quite a few youth town halls.
Right, okay,
You know, and
great.
with those youth town halls, we're able to get those agencies and organizations who are committed and who's been doing the difficult work in working with that population. We bring them all together because we try to create a community network
Right.
where it's a holistic approach when somebody comes to some of the town halls that we put together, where the whole family is serviced. You know, so I'm just really excited to be a part of a more broader network that helps respond to the needs of our young people.
Okay, well, speaking of that, and our young people, parenthood, fatherhood, the responsibility of the African American man in his household, in his community, is something you have been very instrumental in improving and being a catalyst for many young people. You want to talk about some of the things you've done to add that element and to develop it in our community to some in ways similar to what it once was when our fathers and parents were active.
Oh man, you know, back then we always talk about that village.
Right.
You know, but and people say, oh, we need that to happen now. Where's the village now? And I tell people, hey, you have to be the walking visible example of what you want it to look like. You know, a lot of our young people, they it's not what you say, it's what you do. You know, so, and we got to realize that the like we said before, the trauma and the mental health issues when you're young, sometimes it carries over into your adulthood, and now you're not an effective adult.
Right.
You know, to your children. So it's so generational, and we have to break the chains. And we've been doing a lot of work in that area. I don't know if I want to segue into this.
Please do. Please do.
And unfortunately, those youth and young adults, they lose their path, and some become incarcerated. So now, what do we do? Well, what we've been doing for over the last 10 years is what we call fatherhood in the neighborhood, block by block, because we know the solutions to curing some of the ills in our community starts at home and on the block.
Right, definitely.
So we've took it upon ourselves to go to the penitentiaries and actually bring the children and other family members to keep a connection with that dad.
Right, okay.
You know, because we know that that dad, that young adult, will eventually return. The highest percentages of return from the Illinois Department of Corrections to the Garfield Park community and the Austin community, and Chatham. You know, so we try to build that bridge. We bring the agencies and organizations in there to help them with their transition, because at Sheridan Correctional, we have a lot of short timers.
Right.
You know, they were able to qualify from max and medium penitentiaries because of good behavior and coming to Sheridan, and that allows us, like I said, you know, to have a wonderful day where the warden kind of opens the door, lays out the red carpet, allows a lot of interaction that normally wouldn't happen. Kids are able to create Father's Day cards. We bring them there free of charge. And to make a long story short, the purpose of that is to show them that somebody care.
Right.
Because there's a lot of times we have
Yeah.
men and young adults saying, don't nobody care about me.
Definitely.
You
Too
know,
often,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so we try to break that chain. And when we come back from the correctional facility, those families bridge right back into the resource and the business fair that we're doing. You know, where it's additional resources. We got agencies and corporations that are going to be there that day that will help with parenting, mental health, tutoring, job training, financial literacy, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, I started off, you know, trying to work with the whole person, and now I'm full circle with Congressman Danny K. Davis, doing it at a greater capacity. And I'm so excited about that. So actually, when we're doing our Fatherhood in the Neighborhood block by block event will be Saturday, June the 22nd.
21st.
Oh, thank you. June the 21st. June the 21st, Saturday, 2018, 2815 West 5th Avenue. The buses to go to the penitentiary will be leaving at 7 o'clock, but the event that'll start at about 10 o'clock. And one more thing, Mr. Cook, we're also going to be doing an award ceremony that day, where we're going to be acknowledging people that you may nominate, men that you may nominate in your neighborhood who you see as role models in your church, in the community, in the family, that's doing positive things.
You want to tell them how and where to call or email if
and
they
you
want to
wanna,
nominate.
You give us a call. We have a nomination form so you can submit the individual that you might want to nominate. You can call us at 773-533-7520. You can ask for Sharita Logan or myself, Willy Burton, and we can email you the nomination form so you can make sure you identify a man in our community who might had been on a negative path but has turned their lives around, and we want to recognize that.
All right. That is great. It's too often that we lose people because we don't just validate their existence. We don't recognize them as people. My mom told me when I was a kid, you know, try to make sure you speak to everyone in passing. She say, because in the midnight hour or the early mornings, if some jump off, and in our community, North Lawndale, right?
Yes.
Or any other community now, to be honest, the people you speak to are the ones who will speak up for you. And Lord, I have seen that happen in so many occasions. I've had a run amok of security at college and the window washer.
Wow.
Who been there 20 years. Downtown at Roosevelt University would say, hey, that's Cook. Cook a student. Oh, we couldn't tell. We saw Cook in the hall lounging around, you know, or sitting in a classroom that was empty and no classroom. They say, oh, but Cook be here sometime from morning to night. He know my schedule. He got morning class and sometimes his next class is this evening, man.
Wow.
What he gonna do? Find a place quiet and relax, you know? And they look at him like, how you know all this? They the security. They the ones didn't know me as well. Other security did know how sometime I spent a whole day at college because I didn't want to come back to the neighborhood and possibly not make it back to class. And the other thing is get into some trouble. So I would leave in the morning and stay there after the morning class down there and run around downtown. So as you said, recognizing people, validating that they have importance to us and their community helps them want to become more active, especially those who made mistakes. Realize that we accept them as they are, and we want to help them now do the right thing for the right reasons. And I think you do a tremendous job with that. Are there some of the other programs you want to talk about? I know you work with youth with music, you work with youth becoming more active in policy decisions that can help improve things for the youth. It may be some policies that's changing now, or we're trying to still get changed that you've helped the youth and the other men develop that is actually being considered nationally to help all men and young folk.
Well, what we've been doing, you know, for quite a while is pushing for foster care.
Foster care, all right.
Because sometimes we have to build our families untraditionally. Some of our kids get lost along the way. Sometimes because of addictions.
Right.
Parents, those young parents, they fall short of nurturing and developing their child. So now, what happens to the child? So we've been real strong in the area of foster care and making sure that legislation has been passed to help that along.
Right. Okay.
I come to find out, I didn't know, my uncle, my favorite uncle, it was a twist in the family because I thought I knew who his true parents were.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. You thought you knew, right?
Yeah, but he told me that he actually, had foster parents, and so that kind of threw me off because I and I looked at his transition in life from Stateville Penitentiary, and then how he made himself an upstanding citizen. But I used to think that it was for one reason, but he talks about how the values that were put into him were from his foster family members. That even though he strayed along the way, he couldn't deny the fact that they the one that put the values within him, that was suffocated in him, but
right.
he eventually had to submit to. But
right. Okay.
I just say that to just speak on the fact that, we can definitely learn and build families through foster care.
Right, definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned, because we do have a multi-tier. As they say, we as people, whether it's our coloration, whether it's our hair texture, whether it's our sizes, we are not monolithic, as well as our family structures are not monolithic. Even when we think it's the traditional mother, father, or the traditional single-parent woman, what we also leave out is single-parent fathers, which I'm sure you've interacted with more, and you might want to speak on the fact that sometimes one of the most unheralded group of people in the community doing good parenting is single-parent fathers.
I think me and you both know one
right.
guy.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
and it's Mr.
Colonel, Lieutenant.
Mr. James Shannon.
Yeah,
one heck of a guy.
Yes,
I was with him. Sometime we might, and like you said, it's herald men that are in our neighborhood who might have lost a spouse.
Right.
So what do I do? Or a spouse, became incarcerated. So men are capable too, good if they have good values and they care solely about the upbringing of their children, they're capable. Because usually in those situations, people think you need to go to the grandmama now, take the child to the great auntie or somebody like that.
Definitely.
But there's so many examples of men in our community that are very capable, until somebody else comes along the way, to be sound fathers, single fathers, and we uplift the fathers in our district who are doing that.
Right. And I'm fortunate that I have the fortunate and unfortunate situation of my business manager who helped us build a Hand Up Recovery Homes lost her mom at a young age.
Wow.
And her father raised a group of girls, primarily himself. And as they got older, the girls then learned to help each other and help their father more. And so it happens, and we rarely talk about it. We rarely recognize those fathers. And I had one, Mr. Milton, when we were younger, that had to help raise his kids. And then sometime even when they separate, sometime the man ends up with custodial custody of his children. And we rarely talk about it. We're advocating, and you're advocating to create more programs for those single-parent fathers who've been left out the loop so often. And they are stuck with trying to work and still take care of their family. In some cases, they've had to take some jobs that really weren't in their skill level. But during the day to make sure they were there for their kids, and then they just took a remedial job at night. when somebody could be there to take care of the kids overnight for them, and they'd be out early in the morning getting their kids to school, preparing breakfast, all of that. So yeah, I'm glad that we got to that important part. And some of the wounds that are left from some of those situations, or the woundedness of some of our men that don't seem like they ever can get a positive break in society or recognition for the things they've done right. And I think that's one thing you have been able to do always from the day I met you till now is stimulate and recognize the talented young men in our community as well as all the ladies and girls, but to also make sure that that's not forgotten when we highlight individuals or people.
Exactly.
You know, so I would like to, I guess we're gonna be moving toward a wrap up. Is there any other important things? I know one thing hit my mind is Annetta Wilson, intergenerational housing that has been created. And I know over there, and a lot of it is led.
Chicago, new facility?
Well, I was thinking of the old one. Didn't know about the new one that was on Roosevelt Kaminsky. But the fact, if there's definitely a new one, we need to bring that up. But also the fact that along the way, she's helped bridge that gap between our young people and our elders, but also when, unfortunately, the grandparents and grand aunts or older aunts, after raising their kids, have to help raise other younger children in the family and or the grandkids and grandnieces, nephews because of the incarceration rates and addiction.
Yeah, she's a good addition to our community in relation to making sure it's a strong template that's in place, you know, that people can look at and revere because it's working.
Yeah, it definitely works. Yes.
And we commend Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, definitely. Annetta Wilson she's probably one of the brightest stars in our community that rarely gets recognized outside our community. But she has changed the landscape of intergenerational relationships
Trailblazer.
Across the United States, and her template is now being looked at worldwide and how to help the elder generations help take care of the younger generations where the high rates of incarceration and substance abuse and alcoholism has destroyed family. And not to say, too, gambling, which doesn't get talked about, or the pharmaceutical destruction of families who may not ever do a street drug, but the pharmaceuticals destroy them families. You know, paid for by great insurance companies and multi-million-dollar drugstores, while a whole town, a good percentage of a town, get addicted. A Walgreens settlement recently, but we'll back off them for now. But the reality is, how does a town with 5,000 people sell more drugs, more pharmaceutical drugs than the big city neighborhood and or in Chicago with 60 to 70,000 people? Go figure. But they're starting to pay for those overlooked indiscretions in helping addiction grow legitimately, illegally in our country. While we talk about what goes on in the streets so much, it's a lot even in the street turned to fentanyl, and we mentioned that when we talk about addiction here, because the pharmaceuticals clients came in with pharmaceutical habits looking for regular heroin, and then it was no longer strong enough, considering pharmaceuticals was 10 to 100 times stronger.
Right.
And now we got all the Narcan on the street, because in order to save a lot of lives, you got to have that Narcan.
Yes,
or 2, sometimes 3, just to bring them back, to get them to the hospital. And then it may take them another week or 2 to actually save that life. And hope it's not permanent damage done to the life of the person and or the family. But it's damage for sure.
Yes, it is.
Anything else you want to add in these last couple minutes?
Well,
I'll reiterate the Father's Day events.
Yes. Yeah, well, just thank you for providing the opportunity to have this dialogue with you.
Great.
And talking about how it's important to stay vested in our young people and our young adults, because we are our brother's keeper. And we all have to put our hands in this, or we're just on the side watching it implode.
Yes,
So
definitely.
once again, We're having our Fatherhood in the Neighborhood block by block event. We do this annually, and it's going to be Saturday, June the 21st, 2018, 15 West 5th Avenue. The business and the resource fest is going to be 10 o'clock. We still have some seats left on the bus. You know, our goal is to take 2 bus loads of children and their families. Please call our office if you have anybody that's incarcerated at Sheridan Correctional Facility, 773-533-7520. Ask for Sharita Logan or myself.
And also I want to mention, we still have scheduled 12 steps, 12 speakers at least on 12 steps of the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program, program of recovery. We have members from Alcoholics Anonymous coming to speak, Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and we may have some people from Overeaters Anonymous or even Emotional Anonymous come in and speak on those steps changing their lives. And that will be May 31st, Care to Cincinnati Enemy Church. And we will have it in the lower level, 15th Street side entrance. And it will start at 1 o'clock and end promptly at 6 p.m. And the pastor has extended a game night to us for those that are there at the end of the program. He said an hour and a half at least. If we want to play all the table games they have for the young folks, all us adults can have some fun too. Sit back, chit chat, continue to encourage each other, encourage people in the community to turn their life around. So Recovery Speakathon, May 31st, Care to Cincinnati, 1448 South Holman, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you. It's been a great. Thank you, Willy Burton.